Hey guys, what's up? Evrelia here. This is the updated 5.2 Affliction-warlock-class-guide. This guide should teach you exactly how to play an Affliction Warlock in patch 5.2, including your stats, what talents to take, and some more advanced gameplay mechanics that you might not be able to find out elsewhere. These are your approximate stat priorities for Affliction. Intellect, hit up to the cap, which is 5100 rating, a balance of mastery and haste, and then finally crit. Now, to explain, hit is optional. The closer you are to the cap, the more reliable your DPS will be, but there's nothing wrong with being slightly underneath the cap. Just avoid going over it. You should generally try and be relatively close to the cap. Mastery and haste should be balanced. These two stats increase in value synergistically, and so you should generally increase them at around the same rate. When you're deciding how much haste to reforge to, it's often beneficial to put your haste just above one of several haste breakpoints. Now, most of the DPS you gain from haste breakpoints only matter on multi-target, and they're generally very small anyway, but if you happen to already be close to one, it can be worth doing. Just don't go significantly out of your way in order to do it. A few of the breakpoints you might encounter in 5.2 are 4717, 6637, 9211, or 9778. But remember, it's more important that you balance your haste and your mastery. When deciding what gems to use, we use a program called Simcraft to calculate our stat weights in order to assess their DPS gains. It can even show you exactly how much haste and mastery you should have. You can click here for a tutorial on how to do this. Generally, in red slots you have a few choices. You can use Intellect and Mastery, or Intellect and Haste, depending on your current balance of Mastery to Haste, or you can use Expertise and Mastery, or Expertise and Haste. Now, the reason for using an Expertise gem here is because it allows you to reforge out of hit elsewhere on your gear, effectively giving you more mastery overall. If you can't do that reforge, then you should definitely go for the Intellect option. In yellow slots, you should be using either 320 Mastery or 320 Haste, again depending on your current balance of Mastery to Haste. And in blue slots, you should use either 160 hit and 160 Mastery, or 160 hit and 160 haste. Talents and glyphs are mostly situational choices. I'll go over the specifics for each encounter in my encounter guides, but the one that you'll be using in most situations is Grimoire of Supremacy. Grimoire of Supremacy gives a slight DPS gain over sacrificing your pet. You'll generally be using the Observer pet unless there's heavy target switching, in which case the Imp is a better choice. So now that the basics are out of the way, let's talk a bit about how to play. Playing Affliction is about keeping your dots active and using Haunt to buff those dots at opportune moments. There are two things you should understand about dots first of all. First is that dots can be refreshed whenever they have less than 50% of their base duration remaining with no penalty. For example, if you cast an 18-second corruption, you can recast it whenever it has under 9 seconds remaining, and it will extend to 27 seconds. This means you won't lose any DPS time. The other thing you need to know is that dots do not update dynamically with your stats. When you cast a dot, it remembers the exact stats that you had when you cast it for its entire duration. If you gain Intellect procs or Dark Soul, your dots will not benefit from them until you recast them. Debuffs on the target don't work this way. Haunt and other similar effects will update your dots dynamically. You have three main dots to keep up: Corruption, Unstable Affliction, and Agony. Agony does the most damage. It starts at 1 stack and then ramps up to 10 over time. Corruption deals damage and has a chance to generate a Soul Shard every time it ticks. Next, you have Haunt. When Haunt is on a target, you do 30% increased damage to that target until Haunt falls off. This costs 1 Soul Shard. Using Haunt at the right time can have a major impact on your DPS. Your filler spell is Malefic Grasp. This is a channeled spell that gives bonus ticks to your dots. Malefic Grasp extends like a dot, so you can start channeling a new Malefic Grasp at any time with no DPS loss. When the boss is under 20% health, your filler spell changes to Drain Soul. Finally, you have Dark Soul Misery. Remember, if you want this to affect your dots, you need to use it before you cast them. Let's talk about the optimal opener. Just before the fight starts, you should drink a potion of the Jade Serpent and begin pre-casting a Haunt to land as soon as the boss is pulled. Next, you use Dark Soul Misery and you do Soul Moon Soul Swap to instantly put all of your dots onto the enemy buffed with Dark Soul. Now, channel Malefic Grasp until you get a few Intellect procs. Some examples are Lightweave, your Trinkets, or Jade Spirit. Once these procs have appeared, you want to cast Soul Burn Soul Swap again. This will cause all of your dots to be updated with the new spell power effects and do more damage. You can also use Felflame to do this instead of Soulburn Soul Swap. This does the same thing, but it won't update your agony. However, it also won't cost a soul shard. If you don't have Bloodlust, this might be the preferred method, since you'll have less soul shards that you can waste on things like this. After you've done this, make sure the Haunt debuff is kept up on the target 100% of the time for as long as your dots are super buffed with Intellect procs and Dark Soul, and then channel Malefic Grasp as much as possible. Finally, just as your Intellect procs and Dark Soul are about to fall off, you can recast Soulburn Soul Swap or Felflame one final time in order to fully extend their duration with these Intellect procs. Only do this if you have spare shards. So a sample opener would be Prepot, Haunt, Soulburn Soul Swap, Malefic Grasp times 2, Soulburn Soul Swap again or Felflame, Haunt, Malefic Grasp spam and keep Haunt up, and then recast Soulburn Soul Swap just as Dark Soul is about to fall off. Now throughout the fight you want to take as much advantage of Intellect procs as possible by recasting your dots when such procs occur. Try to only recast dots that are within their refresh window unless you get several procs at once. For example, you can refresh Corruption when it has any time between 9 and 0 seconds left remaining on a usual basis. Now, normally I would wait until it has almost completely expired before I refreshed it. However, if I got several Intellect procs up, I would refresh it as soon as it entered its refresh window. You should ideally save your Haunts to be used when you have Dark Soul or many Intellect procs up at once. Whenever your Dark Soul is ready to use, activate it, do a Soulburn Soul Swap to buff your dots, then keep Haunt up and channel Malefic Grasp as much as possible. Just before Dark Soul is about to fade, do another Soulburn Soul Swap to keep them ticking with the buff. Whenever you are about to cast a Haunt, try to make sure that you can channel Malefic Grasp for its entire duration. Since Haunt lasts for 8 seconds, you should make sure all of your dots have more than 8 seconds remaining before you cast a Haunt. Thank you for watching this guide. I'll be doing encounter specific guides for all of the tier 15 fights to teach you how to DPS in specific situations. Remember to subscribe to this channel to be notified when they get posted. For now, feel free to check out my tier 14 guides. You can also watch me streaming live on twitch.tv/Evrelia.